short introduction. So, ladies and gentlemen, Aljoša here. He is a serial entrepreneur and an expert in media and advertising. He is the co-founder of 6 advertising, technology, and media companies in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Since its founding in 2000, he has been leading Httpool, or Httpool, which offers mobile and digital advertising in fast-growing markets. Is based in Ljubljana. The company partners with media agencies looking for integrated digital advertising solutions on mobile, tablet, and desktop. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you have already met David Čreslovnik from Ceneje, d.o.o. So put your hands together and let's hear the great talk between David and Aljoša.
Thanks.
Thank you. First, I'd like to just turn back on the previous lecture. I always had a theory about multitasking. It's about fucking up many things at the same time, and now I know that I'm right. So, first, Aljoša, can you tell something about yourself? Who are you?
No, sure. So, hi, my name is Aljoša Jenko, and I'm originally from Slovenia. I grew up in Koper, a small town next to the coast. Most of you probably know it. And then at a certain point, I decided I would like to be an entrepreneur. So the first opportunity came in college, so at the university. We started, actually I co-founded a couple of companies. There were 3 companies at that point. And then at a certain point in 2000, we launched Httpool. And Httpool was way ahead of time. So we had the luxury to be the first one in the region. And then, more or less, I wanted to grow it and build it across the region. And this was practically what I understood. So I understood the markets around the Adriatic and build it up in Croatia, in Serbia, Macedonia, in Bosnia. And then, at a certain point, I realized I didn't have skills as self-made entrepreneur or potentially a perspective to build it into a global company. So that was my big dream and a desire. And this led me then to go to the States. I live at Berkeley first. I did my MBA at Haas. Then I moved to Palo Alto. So I was in the center of Silicon Valley between 2005 and 2008. Where lots of things were happening. So a lot of innovation, especially in our field. And then again, I had an opportunity to stay there and focus on venture capital, but I realized I was not yet in the position to start giving advice to founders because I haven't reached an IPO or exit or any global story. So that brought me back to Europe, and obviously coming from the States, the logical point was to live in London for a couple of years. So I was for 6 years in London. Then I moved to Vienna for a while, practically to consolidate the center in Europe. And now for 6 years, I've been living in Dubai because after Europe, I started building up then the Asian markets. And just to give you like a bit of a heads up in terms of where we're today. So after a couple of, not only organic growth over the last 20 years, but also after a couple of mergers and acquisitions, we build up now Aleph. So Httpool is one of the co-founding teams. And we build up Aleph group across 80+ markets with 1,500 people working practically most of the major media platforms as the exclusive partner across selected markets. So representing Meta, Google, Amazon, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, obviously, and many others across Reddit now as a new addition across selected markets in these, let's say, more emerging territories. So that's a bit of a high level, what we've done. And the question is more or less how we came there and what we've done on the journey.
First, I need to ask you, which social profiles do you have?
That's a bit embarrassing. I have the profiles, but I'm not really using almost any of those. And I tend to be extremely focused on whatever I do and not wasting too much time on non-essential things. So I'm an essentialist by definition.
Okay, so actually knowing the products into detail doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, that you can't develop the business around that.
No, absolutely. So if the question is a bit, how I started and why, even starting this segment, I don't understand technology. I mean, I didn't understand technology at that point. So I started with a book of 60 pages about digital advertising. That was in 2000. So there was nobody had any idea. And when we were selling, sometimes when we were selling advertising banners here in Croatia or Slovenia, we got a knock on the door, and somebody would deliver a long banner, almost 5 meters long, on a truck. So these were the times that we more or less built up markets client by client and invested heavily in education, heavily in the technology, heavily in the standards. So practically was completely pioneering project, from the beginning.
So at the start, it didn't work, right? So why endure? Why keep on going? Why not stay at a garage-sized company and have this little comfort zone? Why
So
go
that's a good question, because it's not that it didn't work. It's the point is we're way ahead of time for many years, and what we realized at that point of time is if you want to succeed and especially scale it up more internationally, you have to have a differentiated product or something exclusively, something that you can really scale and it will be unique. And this only happened really at scale in 2012 when we start shifting toward the exclusive representation model, because in this case we start becoming the extension of the largest media platforms. So Twitter, and then LinkedIn came, and Spotify, and more recently Meta, and last year Amazon. So this then changed completely the position that we have, very neutral, so working with all the ecosystem, and very powerful as well, because you don't have a competition really in these markets if you have this kind of neutral business position, the business model, as an extension. So this changed a lot in terms of the opportunity. So opportunity came, but opportunity came mostly because we were ready. So my key assumption was that if we build up the ecosystem and let's say the infrastructure around emerging markets, and at that point was like more or less the whole Central Eastern Europe, and later on Asia as well, we would have a chance to then represent either technology partners or media platforms that start emerging post-2005, or potentially working with clients or agencies across international markets from one single point of contact. So that was the assumption. It only then been realized much later, but also what we understood based on your question is some of the business models, and maybe many of yours, are following a so-called S-curve. I had no idea that existed. Even in the business schools, we didn't learn, or I didn't pay attention. The point is, in certain places you have, or certain business models, you actually have to develop the basis over many years, and then when at a certain point you reach some scale or network effects, what happens is you start getting rewarded and you start exponentially growing. So in the last 5 years, we grew more than 30 times, 30 to 40 times in practically 5 years. And this was a consequence of building the solid ground. And the other thing is we managed to run our operations on an exponential basis, which means you have to have in place everything from structure, top talent, unlocking working capital limitations typically, focusing really on the culture of the company, because when you start scaling and hiring, now we're hiring probably 500 people per year. In 80 plus markets, we are now at 1,500. It will be 2,000 people now very shortly. But the point is now the exponential growth requires completely different structure, internal processes, focus on culture, different talents, and different organizational parameters, because you cannot run your company as an entrepreneur, more or less still being involved in everything from marketing to finance to legal to selling to promoting things to developing businesses to do M&A and everything else. So you need to professionalize your structure. So you have central support functions. You need to build up different product teams. You have to have vertical specialization. You have to build up, market segment specialists and different teams. Because for each of the segments we listened before, you have to have different capabilities. E-commerce vertical, for example. You have then fintech, you have health tech, you have many other FSG, and this everything falls under either digital natives, or it falls under the traditional, more branding advertiser, or the SMB. And for SMB, it's completely different approach than for, let's say, digital native, for serving, let's say, clients like you.
Okay, great. So let me just, if something went wrong, but many things went wrong, they must have, because you have grown so fast and you had to let control, because usually when people are small and medium enterprises, there's one guy who has all the control, all the oversight, and you lost it at a certain point. So you had to find the right people who took over different areas of your business, and it's just not possible that not something went wrong, for sure.
Okay, so these are basically two questions in one. One question is more or less, as I interpret it, is how we actually deal with managing complexity, and especially across all these markets. And the second question is, what I learned, let's say, or what was the things that actually went wrong. So let me start with the first one. So how you can build and run such a complex organization across 80 plus markets? And the answer is you can never assume you can manage that. So how, even like starting the first markets in the Adriatic region, The assumption was the only way to succeed was not to find managers and assume that you'll be running the company, having control and visibility, because you cannot do it. It was the assumption you need to have partners that have fully aligned interests and completely aligned values and cultures, because this is the only way how you're going to be able to scale across so many markets. And the same applies then to different product teams, to different vertical segments, to different, let's say, product directors and so on. In each case, we chose to go for partnerships to actually empower top talent and also secure the top talent, and then enable them to be successful entrepreneurs within the organization. So that's the only way how we succeed. And then build up the culture around results, proactiveness, partnership, transparency, and so on. So this was all part of the, not so much design, but part of myself and my values, and more or less transferring my approach and choosing people that actually I could not only 100% trust, but also love to work together. And for those to be in a better position across their own positions or different regions or countries, and being in a much better position than, for example, I would be if I would, let's say, moving to, I don't know, Austria or Indonesia or Malaysia, or today we launched Nigeria with meta exclusivity, for example.
So actually building a
partnership, yeah, exactly, and focusing on the culture, and obviously then processes and empowering everyone through the centralized support and structure. Now, what things went wrong? Many, many things went wrong. So, but if the question is, if I can share, let's say, the few of those learnings of key failures, let's say, or key learnings, challenges, and so on. One was connected to the structure I built, so connected to these partnerships. When I started at the company back in 2000, I didn't have much of the experience. So how I expanded across different markets was mostly through providing equity to the minority partners, strategic partners, and management. When we had 5 companies, this worked. When we came across, let's say, the number of 20+ countries and offices, it started working because the complexity of managing all the relationship was, too complex, let's say, and aligning on all the levels in terms of the structure did not work anymore. So then I used the opportunity with the first major merger in 2017 with a Sony-backed IMS at that point, so the Latin American sister company. And what we done then, we restructured completely, and I went through the 50+ negotiations one-on-one to restructure the company and simplify completely so that we can now operate as one company with fully aligned interest, but still with the same option scheme and ability to share the dividends and any proceeds from exit, IPOs, or wherever this happens, to the team based on the merit and based on the relative contribution to the company. So that was the first one, so the structure. So the moral of this point is build up the structure up front, because if you scale, or actually when you're successful and big, it becomes too complex to manage unless you have a proper alignment and a structure. So that's one. The second one is connected again to the talent, because ultimately, especially in our industry, everything is about talent and execution. So the learning was never compromise and never wait too long, to cut the partnership with somebody or some teams that are not performing or sharing the value, because for long term, there is a massive opportunity cost and potentially reputational damage and many other potential issues. So that was one of the key learnings. And a third learning, maybe, especially for those entrepreneurs any entrepreneurs here in the room, sometimes most of them, or let's say quite some. So there is always a temptation when you have an opportunity to make a partial exit, let's say, or get some liquidity, especially if this is your first, let's say, exit. So don't sell too quickly. We luckily preserve majority of the wealth. However, some of our initial shareholders, investors, angels, and so on, they practically sold in a moment. Just prior, we started exponentially growing, and they probably lost 100x to 1000x in terms of opportunity within a couple of years. So that was, let's say, the third one. And the fourth one, just to volunteer one more, is not so much about a challenge we had, but actually the experience, which is very relevant now in the case of approaching recession, let's say. We're in a position just in 2008 to raise quite a significant amount from a venture capital. And I had a term sheet on the table on the 1st of November. It was an amazing offer. But then on 31st, just on the New Year Eve, just before celebrating, I got a call, and the investor said, unfortunately, the situation looks really terrible next year. So they passed. So that was the first one. And the second one happened in 2013, when you had two VCs in the final round competing with each other. One offered massive amount, again, very good valuation, no hidden liquidity preferences, no small tax, nothing. The other one, let's say, more lousy offer. But then, two of the partners of this VC, by coincidence, two Italians, met at the market, buying fish, buying vegetables, and talking. And it came to realization that they actually both bidding for the opportunity. And they started colliding. And one of them called me saying, you know what, I met your partner, I didn't know, but we're now coming jointly with our offer. I said, no, you're not. You're out, you passed. It was non-confidentiality. So I need to cut you off. Thank you very much. Out. So, and there was, at that moment, we already were opening champagne, and like it was a moment of glory, amazing terms. Every entrepreneur is wishing to have a top name VC, chasing him or her. And at this point, felt really, sad. Or, we were all frustrated. However, I could not be happier years after that we never took any venture capital, any institutional money. Could not be happier. Why? Not only we preserve majority of the wealth, but on the other side, we never were pushed into making any decisions or to sell prematurely or to do anything that we otherwise wouldn't do. So yes, we grow slower, organically. It took much longer, but then the fate is still in our hands. And we can still decide how we're going to then exit if we want to exit or go public or whatever is the case. So it was an amazing journey. This was like one of the, I think, key lessons. So don't sell too early, don't compromise, take capital that is actually aligned completely with your time horizon. Because for me, this was more or less a life journey. You cannot build up a company across so many markets or regions. Now, obviously, it was not completely organic. It was partial acquisitions, and we bought a company now in the MENA region and in Africa. But still, sometimes it doesn't make sense to compromise or try to look for the shortcuts or something that, from outside, it would look, as a success for the short term. So that's maybe a couple of key learnings.
Okay, if I go back to the S-curve, when you, just the moment before you go into the exponential growth, let's say that hypothetically you run out of money just before you go, and the market situation is not ready for another year. So what do you do then?
So you need to be creative. So unfortunately, we've been in this kind of situation in, I think it was around 2008. We overstretched, and it was a very difficult time. But then again, it's and there's maybe one key lesson as well that we learned. If you have a solid business and solid value proposition, recession actually helps you. Why? Talent is available, especially now considering all the layoffs from Meta, Twitters, Snapchats, and all the others, TikTok as well. So talent is available. The second thing is there is less noise, because those companies that are not really, let's say, in the best position, or they don't have a perfect business model, or creating really value, or depending on the venture capital money, or any other thing, they're not going to be there and survive. So you have potentially an opportunity. Plus, in terms of competitive landscape, you have an opportunity and more time to develop your business and ideas. So I think this is like a great moment. Now, how you need to go through working capital issues, absolutely a nightmare sometimes, but typically you have supply and demand, and you need to negotiate or renegotiate or actually explain, let's say, your suppliers to support you through difficult times, because obviously you're bringing a lot of value to them, and sometimes you can just not be a bank to your, let's say, suppliers and create them on top of bringing value. So sometimes you need to renegotiate some of the deals, and this actually helps us to then scale exponentially, because if you are limited in terms of your working capital, you will never be able to exponentially grow, because for every dollar of revenue of growth, you need to invest upfront a certain amount for which you potentially don't get continuous funding or credit lines or whatever is the case.
So the recession is an opportunity. That's the basic learning out of that, and we are probably...
We are in a recession in Europe, and most likely or almost certainly will be next year on the global scale. So all the indicators are practically saying that. Now we'll see. There's almost no chance we're getting out of it. But then, yes, it's an opportunity. So you always have to think from the advantage of disadvantage. So how to turn it in a positive way, especially from an entrepreneurial perspective. Every disadvantage brings advantages. So this is what we learned. And I went through 2 major recessions already. First was in 2000, 2001. And we benefited amazingly in 2001 because one of our major investors, a private equity that invested into a holding company that was a partner of, or actually investor in Httpool, decided that internet was too risky. So the digital investments were too risky. So what we done? We bought them out on discount over many years. So the point is, if that didn't happen, we will not be here. We will not be here. So there was amazing luck that happened because we had completely asymmetrical perspective on the opportunity. And we were the ones taking it and continuously, with perseverance, dedication, long-term vision, building it up. And the second opportunity that we realized was in 2008, 2009. We started practically expanding in 2009, 2010. And since we are in a advertising industry, I can tell you one of my personal experiences talking to Mark Red from WPP. Most likely you all know him. At that point of time, he was a friend of a friend. So I met him in 2008 when I moved to, actually 2009 when I moved to London. And I showed him my plan. And the guy said, seriously? You're crazy. I said, oh, thank you. He said, why? How can you thank me? I said, if WPP is not going to be entering this space, I have an opportunity. So now I'm relieved. I'm confident I can do it because I was assured that obviously WPP or other agencies will actually step into the field and build up a massive digital advertising arm. So I was lucky, again, because it was 2008. Nobody everybody was cutting costs, nobody was considering investing, or especially investing something that at that point was not bringing massive absolute results. It was like long shot and more like a lifestyle kind of opportunity. But if you commit on long term and you're passionate about it, you can achieve it. It's not going to happen overnight. It's like puzzles. And then when it happens, what it happens actually when you have scale and network effects, every additional partner we have, every additional market we get, more profitability we have, and more we can invest in competencies, in technologies, into verticalization, specialization, and so on, which benefits, again, all our markets, all our partners, all different, every initiative we have is then benefiting because of the scale. So it's a fly effect. And this is something that also I was not aware of, and in terms of building the business model, because you're looking at more from country to country or building up the basis. But you're not aware that it's becoming easier and easier. And not only that, you can scale more, and this is all fueling the exponential growth again. So it all makes sense, but it makes sense when you're looking from the future back.
That's always the difference. So I only took from you, you need to be crazy, you need to be bold, and you need to have luck. That are 3 things and you need to have skill. Skill is also, and dedication and passion.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
So I said we were on the brink of recession, you said we are already in it. So what would be like 3 things that will happen in the future, in the near future in marketing, digital marketing?
Okay, so good question. So if you think very short term, especially within the recessions, most of focus becomes on performance. So again, being in full control. I mean, I'm probably not talking to the right audience because you are all focusing on the proper KPIs, performance, return on investments, and so on all different metrics. So I think it's, in this case, you're still in a very good position. Now, unfortunately, and coming back to the previous presentation, unfortunately, many of the purchases are very impulsive purchases. And we see especially the category of e-commerce and tickets below, let's say, $50, we see a lot of pressure there, not only because of algorithms being problematic, the privacy, the data, the measurement, and everything else, iOS 15 and so on, impacting, but also on the other side, the purchasing power, or let's say users being more, or buyers being more conservative in their purchases and becoming more rational in terms of their decision making, it's affecting, as we see, the success or growth in your segment. So that's one, privacy, data, solutions that actually going to be addressing that is going to be appearing. In performance segment, who's going to benefit? From all our media partners, the most enthusiastic and optimistic is Amazon. So Amazon more or less started really investing into the advertising part last year. And we started representing it in Israel, in the Nordics, and now expanding and building up extensive tools to enable you and then other clients to actually leverage the Amazon's extensive, let's say, channels or products or opportunities. And obviously Amazon has extensive data itself. So that's one. The second thing that we are seeing, and if you ask me in terms of what will happen, if you ask me like 5 years ago, how the technology is going to influence the digital marketing, I would say it's going to be practically in all the segments, all the fields, except maybe creativity is still going to be a part of the human domain. Today, we're evaluating multiple tools within creative optimization, analysis, optimization based on AI, and I'm convinced that in a couple of years, also creativity, obviously, is going to be still, you have a human touch, but in reality, it's going to be predefined or predesigned almost by machines. Even today, when we're looking, for example, on cases, the robots are telling us, no, this creative will not work. Why? Because you're looking left, you're not looking right, or the background is not pink, but it's yellow. And your car should not be white, but red, or whatever else. So we're understanding that a lot of things are going to be developing within technology. Everything is becoming more and more complex. Somebody mentioned before, it's becoming extensively complex. I remember the dog there, the TikTok presentation of Sarah. So yes, that's exactly how we feel as well sometimes. So it's all about education. And I would actually think, yes, you can run with a small team, but on the other side, the level of complexity, the opportunities, the differences among all these different media platforms, the opportunities in terms of measurement, going beyond just thinking about policies, business integrity, measurement was one, targeting opportunities, localization, then it brings so many opportunities, not threat, but opportunities, but you need to properly invest in the talent, properly invest into the structures, properly invest in education, and to make really a proper, let's say, or optimize the opportunities these platforms are bringing. And what else we're seeing now? Many things that are disrupting your field. We're seeing from Asia, I mean, probably many of you know, all these different social video initiatives. Or you have ability, let's say, to contact a person that's going to be helping you to buy specific product, which is, let's say, a little bit more complex to buy, over an app, and having a video conversation with this person. Or on the other side, you see many simplifications where you have full end-to-end solutions, especially for the SMBs within commerce. So social commerce marrying the digital advertising. So being able to build a catalog or having your services and then push via multiple channels, and then system optimizing toward the return on spend or investments or whatever it is, and you see the impact and everything else. But this is like fully integrated now, and then it's going to be seamless integrations in terms of commerce and media. Elon Musk just mentioned now that you have a one-click buy or purchase on Twitter in a certain point. Instagram or WhatsApp, the social commerce that is now being launched in the States. We're now, as Aleph or Httpool group, we now have as one of the few companies, an API for WhatsApp and building up social commerce in Nigeria, for example, in Bangladesh and so on. Will be coming in this region probably next year. But this is the concepts we are seeing are appearing because there is still lots of complexity, and if you want to eliminate that, you need to kind of build the solutions to do that. And I think technology-wise, technology enablement, complexity increasing, opportunities, market segment specialization, new channels, new opportunities, new disruption coming in the space, and I think many other things that we are not even aware of.
So to wrap it up, when your boss says it's recession, we need to cut the costs, Aljoša says invest into knowledge, invest into people, invest into talent.
Not even that. Actually, invest in the market share. Because today, you have an opportunity, and you're competing with the big brands. And those big brands are going to be most conservative, most likely. And you are the nimble one. And you actually can squeeze in, you can be creative, and you can actually take the opportunity and take advantage of that. So yes, when everybody, I mean, this is the same as with the stock market. When everybody's greedy, what do you do? It's like you leave the market. When everybody is off the street, it's like you start investing in buying. So I think now is the time. Now is the time for you actually to get a chance to improve your position. And at the same time, you have more time and less competition and less noise on the markets. So I think it's great. The only problem, obviously, is the purchase power, and assure you bring a valuable proposition to the users. So that's there's a big challenge, obviously, but everything else, it's an opportunity.
Thank you, Aljoša. Maybe we could use this optimistic note to wrap up our conversation. See if there are any questions or anything like that.
Sure. Sure. Very welcome.
Okay. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, can we hear a round of applause for the guys?
No, I like the second questions about the VC money. So no, it depends on what you want to achieve. Sometimes if you want to build up a market share very quickly, and sometimes if you want to build up competencies that you don't have, and especially when you want to scale rapidly or invest in CapEx or other opportunities that you cannot scale just organically, you don't have other choice, not even just other choice. Sometimes it's extremely beneficial. In this case, the only point is that you need to focus on choosing those investors or partners that have the same time horizon. If your exit it's in 5 years, then you align. If you're, even if you don't think it's not only VC's money, it's like sometimes you think about who you want to work with or who can actually bring you strategic value, and you might sometimes find family offices or individual investors or angel investors in your segment that can bring much more value at a certain point. And when you really need to scale and get a 10 million ticket or more, yes, you're looking for a VC. But sometimes you don't go for a VC or institutional money when you're looking for a couple of $100K or maybe for a few millions. So in this case, you rather maybe look how to stay, let's say, more independent and still control your fate, or you don't know. It really depends on the situation.
Okay, so to sum up, it depends on the situation, but also the question is, how will oncoming recession influence or impact your business?
Our business. So we went through 3 recessions, and actually it positively impacted our business for a couple of reasons. One reason was a major shift from the traditional media into digital. The second was, the digital actually performs. And the third, the focus was not so much on the branding part, but a really strong investment from more digital native performance advertisers and exporters. So they still had a positive return on investment and assumed that investing more would actually help them. Mm-hmm. So we managed to not only sustain the growth, but actually improve it. Especially this was in the COVID times. I mean, everybody of you most likely benefited tremendously. Now, that's why we saw extensive growth within the e-commerce segment. And then why we see now potentially slower growth, not because that we will not be growing, but because we had such tremendous growth in terms of e-commerce in the last years. So for us, and then is another thing, we are continuously extending into new markets, new regions, new partnerships, and also emerging markets are way behind, and there's such a big gap between emerging markets and developed markets that even there is a recession, a couple percentage per year in terms of GDP decrease. While there is like we've been doubling our business every year. So even there's like 3% of decrease, we are not affected. But this is something that it's not only about us. It's like many of you are not going to be experiencing recession because exactly of the same trends. Because we're still more or less breaching the gap and growing, and we're still at the early stage. Many of you, I mean, especially in the startup ecosystem, when you start in the company, you're not thinking now are going to be influenced by market trends and recessions. Why? Are you optimized in terms of the market share? Have you saturated your market potential? Absolutely not. In most of your cases, you're very far from reaching the top of the potential, right? So, and this means you'll be still growing. Maybe not as fast. We grew probably even faster, especially in the COVID times. So we're not really afraid. I mean, in COVID times, everybody was afraid. We were extremely afraid. But then we were surprised again. It didn't happen.
I hope this answers your question. And the last one is from Andre, who has been giving us a lot of good questions. So one, please, applause for Andre. If you're brave enough, you can raise your hand. Where's Andre? Oh, there it is, all the way in VIP Jammers. Hello. Okay, so you put a lot of hopes in data-driven creatives, targeting, etc. Don't you think there will be less data because of the data protection trends?
Yes and no. So short term, yes, absolutely. There's a massive challenge. Mid-term to long-term, everybody's been investing tremendously into solving this. And you have not only Metas and Googles and others coming with their solutions, but what you also see is they're coming third-party technology solutions that actually are helping now to navigate all around it. So one way or the other, visibility will be improving again. And I think, everybody believes this is like a temporary issue, that's going to be resolved one way or the other. And we have extensive conversations with not only our media partners, but also with other providers, with technology vendors, with startups, and the whole ecosystem, including Quantum and Qualcomm and many others that are actually deeply involved in the data and have access to some data. So everybody has some ideas on how to resolve it because it became a massive challenge. And we are positive it's going to be one way or the other will be addressed.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for this
Very
insightful
welcome.
talk. Ladies and gentlemen, please give
Thank
a
you.
huge round of applause for Aljoša and David. Thank you, guys.